This week on 1% Weekly, we ask, can WeWork actually work? Is shared ownership the next property scandal? And we look at how HMRC intervenes to prevent certain people getting honours in the New Year's honours list. One of the firms generally regarded as most successful in the kind of community working space is the American giant Wework. But the latest figures that have just been released suggest that Wework ain't working all that well, because their losses trebled in 2017 from 11 million to almost 33 million pounds. Their revenue increased, it almost doubled, but they took on a lot of expensive commitments. And it's hard to see when they're actually going to show some light at the end of the tunnel and get that nice P word, profit, onto their bottom line. In the last 12 months, WeWork has taken on $3 billion of lease commitments. A lot of it funded by Japan's SoftBank, who obviously think there's a long-term game here. Somehow the whole company is valued at 20 billion, even though it does seem to be losing rather a lot of money, and they've just raised another billion so they can keep on going. So they're kind of doing this land grab to become a market leader, and I can see the value of that. There's always benefit in scale, but you also have to wonder whether the underlying model is ever going to be profitable, because they're taking on big head leases and big long-term commitments, and then they're asking very small businesses to make very small commitments, renting rooms by the hour or the day or the week or the month. So it's a model where you buy big and then you break it down into lots of little components. If you can get the occupancy rates and if you get the pricing and the margins right, then I guess there's a business to be built there. London is actually their second biggest city after New York, so they're certainly keen on investing into Britain, which is good. And the concept's very nice. I've had meetings in some of their facilities, and they're usually quite funky. There's a lot of flexibility from literally a perching on the corner of a desk through to having a big meeting room or anything in between. And they've usually got nice communal areas, with coffee rooms and places where you can just kind of relax. So they are a nice working environment. But I think I'd be slightly nervous as an investor as to whether I was going to see a return on all those billions that are being piled in to grow. Yeah, maybe it's another Amazon in the making, and you've got to take that very long-term view. They're going to dominate the market, and then they can set their own prices, and that's what's going to bring up all the margins and the profits. I certainly hope so, because not everyone in this space is going to succeed. A couple of years ago, we were offered investment in one of their American competitors, and I turned it down because I just didn't think there was any security there for investors. And lo and behold, since then, they've hit the wall and investors have lost all their money. This one obviously has got deeper pockets, it's got SoftBank behind it, and many other big institutions. So you kind of think they are dominating the space. They've become the kind of market leader the way, say, Regis did in serviced offices. But I'm slightly nervous about their business model and its long-term sustainability, because if there was an economic downturn post-Brexit, these small businesses are the kind that are going to go to the wall first. So they could lose a lot of their asset base, a lot of their client base, and be left with these enormous leases and fewer companies actually renting space from them. So from my perspective, I would say at the moment the jury's still out on the WeWork model, but certainly the numbers from last year don't look too clever when the losses have trebled and the business somehow is worth 20 billion even though it's loss-making. I love these internet valuations, folks, but it's 1999 all over again. The housing market is a bit like education. It seems to attract politicians to come and meddle with it constantly to try and help the market to work. One of the schemes that's perhaps less well known is the shared ownership model. It's probably less known because it doesn't involve direct government subsidies. It's actually run by housing associations. And the idea is that you can buy effectively a fraction of a house and then pay rent on the bit you don't own. It was originally developed back in the 1980s so that people like nurses or teachers or firefighters could afford to buy a property in a place that might be normally beyond their reach. And the idea is that you come in with as low as a 5 or 10% deposit, and the rest can be either rented or you can take a mortgage to own a bigger piece. And then you can do what they call staircasing, which is to buy another 10%, another 15%, and so on, as and when you are able. The challenge with the scheme has been that most of these properties have been in London and places in, towards the southeast, perhaps Milton Keynes would be another example. And in these areas, of course, property prices have gone up a lot since the 1980s. So you'd need more and more money at your disposal to be able to do that staircasing and buy more equity in the actual home. The other problem that's happened with these is that the housing associations are getting a lot of stick for actually either poor design of the properties in the first place or for a lack of maintenance of them, which means that they're not necessarily the best places to live. So one way and another, this shared ownership model seems to be having a lot of issues. It's not yet become a kind of front page of the Daily Mail scandal, but it certainly looks like it's not working because only a very small percent, and some people are saying 5%, some surveys put it at 10% of people are actually bothering to buy more of the house over the years after they get in. So it's almost become just another rental scheme. And if you are one of the people that's in a shared ownership home with a housing association, you're effectively treated as if you're on an assured short hold tenancy. So if you stop paying the rent, even though you own a small portion of the house, you can still get turfed out on the street, and therefore you no longer have a home. And I'm not sure how you'd go about reclaiming the 5 or 10 or 15% of it you actually own, because as soon as you stop paying the rent, you're just like any other tenant who can be turfed out. So that's a little scandal that might be in the making for you. Watch out for that one on headlines near you coming soon. As you know, we like to heap praises on HMRC in 1% Weekly for all the great things they do for society. And the result of a 7-month legal battle with the Times newspaper is that they've been forced to reveal their involvement in the honours system. And you may sometimes wonder why certain quite famous people don't appear on the honours list while others with perhaps lesser achievements do. Well, it's back to our friends at HMRC. They actually vet people, thousands of people who are put up for awards every year, either the birthday honours or the New Year honours lists. They go through with a traffic light system that's either green, amber or red, and if you're amber or red, you ain't getting a gong anytime soon. That's why people like David Beckham haven't had a knighthood that you think would be an obvious choice for somebody who's been such a figurehead of British sport and British football, involved in the Olympics and the winning bid for 2012, etc. When you see some of the more minor players who've had OBEs and even knighthoods, it seems a shame that he and perhaps Wayne Rooney, our top goal scorer, haven't been honoured at all. The answer is that at some point in their background, they've been involved in something HMRC didn't like. In many cases, it's been proved that there was absolutely nothing wrong. These are tax avoidance schemes. I keep mentioning the fact that avoidance is actually completely legal. It's just called tax planning. But we now have this concept of aggressive tax avoidance, which is a great way of making something that's legal sound like it's dodgy. Well, these people have been involved in various things that HMRC has disapproved of, and therefore they put a yellow flag on them, and therefore they don't get in the honours list. It's just another way in which it's actually quite close to China's social credit system that I spoke about a few weeks ago, where if you are not a good citizen in the eyes of the government, in that case you actually have things like travel restrictions placed on you. Here, You can do all sorts of good work. Some of these people have launched, children's foundations. They're UNICEF ambassadors, like, say, Robbie Williams, the musician. But they've had some kind of involvement in some kind of thing in the past that HMRC disapproved of, so they don't get in the honours list. So that's another little way of the government and HMRC controlling what they regard as appropriate behaviour, even though you've never been convicted of anything. The very fact that HMRC doesn't like something is enough to stop you getting an OBE, an MBE or a knighthood in 2018 Britain. Thanks for watching 1% Weekly. If you like what you see, why not subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click the bell so you get notified every time we broadcast a new program. Or if you just want to watch another video, how about this one? Are you going to make a choice then? Because I can't sort of stay here all day. I'm getting my hands are getting tired. So in your own time,